Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Short Term Show. We have an awesome guest today, Jen Dixon. She owns in several markets, very experienced short-term rental investor. So we're going to hear her story today. How's it going, Jen?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Great.
So let's just start very, very basic. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you ended up investing in real estate.
Well, my husband and I are partners in this. We kind of started this journey together, and it was really kind of by accident. We were living and working in Chicago, and we decided to move to Los Angeles right before COVID hit.
Oh, gosh.
2 months before. We moved in January of 2020. COVID hit in about March of 2020, and so we were on lockdown, and we were really missing our friends and family in Chicago. And we thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could just buy some sort of house that we can use to go back and visit friends and family and then rent it out when we're not there. So we saved up just enough money. I mean, we like scraped together, I think, the down payment of it. And we decided to go for it. We found this lake house in Fox Lake, Illinois. It's about an hour north of Chicago. And we had been frequenting that area sort of kind of like on weekends, go boating and such. And we knew that you could do short-term rentals in Fox Lake. And so we found this great lake house and we just like took the plunge and we bought it, and we started freaking out after we bought it because we were so worried that we just like made the worst decision of our lives. In fact, it was like the best decision. So we bought it. We did some renovations to it. And then we went live like in the middle of winter at a lake. It's like, doesn't sound very promising, but we started getting bookings and we had like this crazy busy summer with guests coming through. And after we got through the busy season, we thought, oh my God, this is so lucrative. Like, I cannot believe how much money we're pulling in with this house. We were able to use it as well. It was just like the perfect scenario. So that was when we started to realize like, this is actually a thing. Like, people actually make this a business. And so we started doing research, a lot of research. We went on Bigger Pockets, just trying to understand like, where are the markets that people are doing this? Because we want to keep doing it. I think that was the time where I read your book too. So I started to get a really good idea of how to operate a short-term rental. Because when we bought the lake house, we didn't know anything about anything. We didn't know what a pro forma was, or like, we were certainly not calculating any sort of cash on cash return. Like, we just went in with it totally blindly. So we ended up buying another short-term rental at the end of 2021 in a town called Morongo Valley, which is the Joshua Tree Market.
Okay.
And that has it's a pretty healthy market if you know what you're doing. So we bought this like total fixer-upper. We made it beautiful. We put in a pool. And then while we were doing that renovation, we actually bought this cabin in the Smokies just a few months after we bought that one. And we did some renovations on this one too. So at one point in time, we had renovations going on at 2 short-term rentals, and it was like crazy. But we went live with this one, and I think we bought this one in March of 2022. So then we had 3, and we were loving it. And we were having such a good time, designing it and renovating it so that it felt more like a short-term rental and a great place for people to live.
Is a dog dying right now?
Oh, yeah. No, it's a dog. Okay. It just has a weird bark. I was like, do we need to go inside? Is something going to eat it? Yeah. So Jen's cabin that we are sitting at where we're hosting this podcast, there is a wild animal out there making some kind of noise that you may come through on the audio on this. So we're being very authentic here, guys.
This is all real. We're not making it up.
Yeah. We are in Wears Valley, Tennessee.
We're in Wears Valley. Such a beautiful area in the middle of the woods. It's like the perfect location. We were so glad we found this place. So we had 3 and we were doing really well, and we just wanted to keep going. At that point, I was able to actually leave my W-2 and just do this full time and, take care of my kids, kind of be there with them a lot more. And we had 3 rentals that had really great summer markets and fall markets, but they were really quiet in the winter. So we thought we really need to get into winter markets, we think. And so we ended up purchasing an A-frame in Lake Arrowhead, California, which was a total gut rehab, but such a fun project to do. A-frames in Lake Arrowhead are highly coveted. So we were really lucky we found one. We made it awesome. It's one of my favorites. And then our last one we bought in New Mexico too, and near a ski town. And so we've been able to cover winter markets and summer markets to help kind of even out our portfolio.
Awesome. So I have a lot of little things to unpack. And guys, this being my first live podcast, I normally take a lot of notes, but no, I can't do that. So I want to go back to why you started investing and why you chose the market that you chose. And I think that it's really important because it doesn't have to be this crazy algebra problem when you're trying to find a market. Like, of course, the data matters. You want to get as much data as you can get, but just start with, where do you like to go with your family? Where have you gone and stayed in a house or a condo, cabin, something like that, instead of a hotel? And I think that's really important. And it helps make the guest experience more authentic when your property is in a market that you go to and you believe in and that you want to be in yourself. And I think that people can tell when you just bought a bunch of like cheap properties that you're just there for the investment, which, I mean, I shouldn't say you're just there for the investment, because a lot of times we are, right? Like I'm here for the investment, but I also like love my properties and I buy them in markets that I love for that reason. And I think that that's a really, really great, like, just everybody dial it back a little bit in terms of getting analysis paralysis and just think of a market that you like to go, and obviously make sure the regulations work, make sure the numbers work, but start with that when you're looking for a market of somewhere that you like to go.
That is one of our pieces of criteria when we're shopping for a new market. It has to be a place that we want to go and visit. I know they always say that, don't get too attached to your houses. And it's kind of hard not to when it's such a big purchase, but I kind of like being attached to my houses because I put more love into it, and I'll put more things into it to make it such a better experience for guests too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, a place that you want to go to and vacation with your friends or your family, that's probably number one criteria for us when we're looking at a new market. Yeah,
and I think there's a fine line too of loving your property and being too much. So we were talking about some of these old school market specific, pre-COVID, pre-Airbnb Facebook groups for certain markets, and a bunch of people in there that have owned things for 25 years and they've got them on these old school rental programs and think the rest of us are idiots because we didn't buy it 25 years ago.
Right.
How old was I 25 years ago? I'm 35, so that would make me 10. I had to actually do that math, sorry. So you can love your property and be really authentic with your guests of hey, I want you to experience how much I love my property without being this is my personal vacation home and you will not do X, Y, and Z here and disrespect it.
Definitely. And there's also a fine line into how much you should really invest in a property as a short-term rental. People break stuff all the time. And you want the nicest things for your house, but you have to remember that it might not last that long if you've got people coming through and it's not important to them like you. So there's definitely a fine line that I try not to cross in terms of how much I'm investing in the actual experience of the house and what's really worth it for guests or what's not.
Yeah, I broke something in mine this morning. I'm staying at my cabin in Gatlinburg and I've accidentally ripped off a cabinet. Haven't told Luke yet.
Nice surprise.
So yeah, I agree. You want nice stuff, but it is going to break. So you just have to be prepared for that and not be offended. It's not that the guest was super disrespectful to your property. It's wear and tear, things happen.
I actually had a guest in our Morongo Valley property who admitted that she put a hole in the wall in the pool table room. She messaged me and she was like, I'm so sorry, I'll pay for it. And she actually did. And I was sort of shocked because that had actually never happened before, that somebody admitted to putting a hole in my wall. But it was just nice that this guest was actually gracious about that. So yeah, happens a lot though.
Yes, it does. So let's talk about your properties themselves for a minute. And I think this is also really important with the whole getting back to basics theme that's kind of manifesting itself with this conversation. Mm-hmm. So are any of your properties these huge, crazy, pool, pickleball court, all this crazy stuff, themed bedrooms, or are they more just cute, clean, comfortable places for people to stay?
They're not themed out at all. They're cute and comfortable. I like to think that I'm doing pretty well at the design aspect of it, but it's not something where I'm trying to theme out any sort of property. I want cozy, comfortable, just a great place for people to come and unwind. One of my properties does have a pool. We did put that in, but in the Joshua Tree Market, you sort of kind of need a pool or some sort of water feature if you're going to have any guests during the summer months. But again, it's just like this kind of white, clean, just really comfortable space. So we are not the theme people. I know that totally works in like Orlando. I feel like you have to do it, but we go for something that's just a little bit more general, and just comfort, right? Comfort and cleanliness is definitely like top of the list for us. So
I totally agree with that. And guys, we are going to do a walkthrough of Jen's cabin here in Wares Valley on our YouTube channel. So be sure to check that out. And I totally agree. Like, you can absolutely be wildly successful going really crazy with the amenities, but there is a large demographic of travelers who don't necessarily care as much about that. Yep. And especially here in the Smokies, the type of traveler that comes here, I think there is a ceiling on the level of luxury that people who come to the Smokies are looking for.
Definitely.
And I think if you just give them like a really nice, updated, sparkling, clean, pretty, cozy place to stay, too many adjectives, sorry, place to stay without going like so crazy. I think the majority of the tourists who come to this market are just looking for kind of a mountain getaway and not necessarily like, you know, craziness.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We do have some kind of fun amenities in this cabin. We did put in a swim spa, which is like a giant hot tub and things like that. But I don't think it was anything too over the top. It's just something that's going to accommodate, because it does sleep 14 people. And so we knew we needed to kind of accommodate bigger groups, but nothing super over the top. And we've gotten nothing but wonderful feedback from our guests who really enjoy the space. They really love the location too. So
yes, it is a great location. Not a lot of steep roads. We've got mountain view over here, quiet, private scenery in the back. It is awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about for a minute how you financed these properties. So it doesn't sound like you just had this huge windfall of cash and started grabbing properties.
Certainly not. Our first property we did save. We scraped together the down payment. And honestly, we probably weren't as prepared as we should have been, but we also had no idea what we were doing. So somehow we found up this courage to just like go for it. We had scraped together the down payment. It was a second home loan. And then we scraped together just enough money to renovate a little bit of the house too. When we bought the one in Morongo Valley and this one, we actually sold a long-term rental that we had in Chicago. It was the house we were living in before we moved from Chicago to LA. And we had long-term tenants in there. They actually wanted to buy it, so we sold it to them. And we took that money and we added the pool for Morongo Valley, and we bought this with that cash. We have also borrowed against retirement, which is probably a little controversial. I think there'd be some people out there that say absolutely do not do that. We did it.
I did it.
We're doing great. Yeah. It's actually probably more common than I think people think. And then for the last two, we borrowed against 401k, and then we used cash from our houses. We saved a lot of the money that we were generating from these houses, because at that time, Ross, my husband, and I were both working W-2, so we were bringing in, money to live off of. So anything we were getting from the houses, we were saving like aggressively, and put basically all of it towards scaling.
I want to stop you right there, because that's a super important concept that I think a lot of people don't get, especially if they're like you, where you were able to quit your job doing this. I was able to quit my job doing this, but I was only making $37,000 a year, so really easy to do. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really important to think about that when you are trying to do this, to quit your job, is to not spend the money that you make on your properties on anything but other properties. So I see people so many times, they want to do this and they quit their job off of a few properties, which is doable. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think that should be your goal. I think your goal should be to use your W-2 to qualify for as many properties as possible.
Yes.
And then quit, like kind of build a fortress of investments around your W-2 and then quit.
Yes.
But, everybody's situation is different. But the not spending your cash flow on anything but I don't spend anything that we make on our several hundred doors does not go to anything except buying more real estate or reinvesting, into things that need updates in our real estate portfolio. And I think that's a really, really important concept.
Yes.
Because people start seeing those bank account numbers grow and they're like, oh my God, I'm rich.
Yeah.
And then they realize like, oh, wait a minute, one hot tub replacement just wiped out me being rich.
Yep.
So I think that's super important.
It's key if you want to scale quickly, like just stockpiling that money and reinvesting it. I'm so lucky that I was able to leave my W-2 because all of our properties carry us pretty well. My husband still is working. He does have a dream of doing this full time too, and we'll get there. But it's like, don't rip off the Band-Aid too quickly because we still need that. We still need that to get approval for loans, like things like that. So it's not just trying to make sure you're covering whatever income you had from your W-2. It's getting approved for loans too. I mean, W-2 it's so key in that, and making sure your DTI is good too. So
if you like what you're hearing, if you're picking up what I'm putting down, you can join me on a live weekly call to talk about your next short-term rental or ask questions about the one you already have. I am live once per week on Zoom. I would love to have you come and say hello. It's strquestions.com. That's strquestions.com. Come and join us. This episode is brought to you by Short-Term Rental Listing Advice. Join this Facebook group and post your listing to get advice from other hosts, including myself, on how you can improve your listing. Or just post your property so you can show off. Join us at strlistingadvice.com. That's strlistingadvice.com.
Totally agree with that. And again, like these are all very basic concepts that I think a lot of people get just too carried away and forget about. Like, start looking in markets that you like to go to. Mm-hmm. Very basic, very easy. Don't spend the money that you make on real estate on yourself. Spend it on more real estate. Mm-hmm. And let's go back to the borrowing from your 401k. So I don't ever want anybody to over leverage themselves, but when you're somebody like me who was quitting my job, or you who are working towards that 401k, if I'm not planning to work that job until I'm 50, it's not doing anything for me.
Right.
Getting another property will do more for me than that 401k. Now if you're listening, have to decide what that threshold is for you. If you've been working for 25 years and you've got, $1 million in your 401k, that's wildly different than me. I had like 10 grand or something in there, or somebody who is earlier on in their career who probably isn't going to continue, to where that 401k really makes a lot of sense. So definitely, it's really about your personal financial situation.
Definitely.
But it can be a really great way to be able to get more properties if you do it the right way.
Absolutely. I mean, you're essentially borrowing from yourself and reinvesting it, right, into something that probably will generate more cash flow quicker. So I like to look at it that way.
Yeah. Okay, so what types of loans were you getting on these? Are they conventional, DSCR?
So we did conventional for 3 of them, and DSCRs for 2 of them. This one was a DSCR actually through the mortgage shop.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Which has been fine. I mean, you obviously have a higher interest rate with DSCRs, but they don't count against your DTI, which is helpful. All of that's really kind of worked out for us. Well, our latest purchase, we have a pretty high interest rate, so at some point we'll probably refinance and try to balance that out a little bit. But so far we've been pretty happy with the way we've been going about it.
I love that. And not going too fast and not just going nuts. I love the simplicity of y'all's strategy here.
Yeah.
And I also this is kind of a hot take about interest rates. Yes, they're terrible right now. But after this, I'm headed to 2 markets to look at 2 different short-term rentals that we're probably going to buy. And we're probably going to be able to get a pretty good deal on them. Mm-hmm. And they're going to make enough money at the interest rate we're able to get them for. It's not a fun interest rate. No. I don't like seeing that on there. But in the future, they are fixer-uppers, both of them. So we'll be able to add value there. They work now. But in the future, if rates go down, who knows what's going to happen? It's likely, but nobody knows. I sure don't.
Yep.
If they do, then we can refinance that to lower. So again, you want to be careful with that. Make sure that the numbers work now. Don't buy a deal that the numbers don't work and then hope to refinance later.
Yeah.
But, we're kind of playing the long game here I think personally, when interest rates go down, prices are going to go up
And you're going to have bidding wars again.
Yeah.
Right?
And so it's going to be kind of a net wash anyway. I'd rather already own the property and then just be able to refinance and I'm not having to fight with everybody.
Absolutely. It gives me so much anxiety if I'm in a bidding war and you're offering over asking. Like that's how it was. Actually, when we purchased this house, it was in the middle of crazy COVID. Everyone snatching up properties in the Smokies. This one had the worst listing, terrible pictures.
That's my favorite.
It is. And I think that for the 3 of our properties, that was the situation where people were overlooking it. So we didn't have this bidding war with this property, which we were lucky because it was really hard to buy in the Smokies at that point. There was just so many people. But I'm of the camp of maybe a higher interest rate isn't so bad if I can find a good deal, you know, because that deal, like whatever your purchase price is, that's forever, right? Not your interest rate.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with that. You guys make good decisions out there. There's a lot, there's a lot of things that go into buying a property and not just the interest rate. And because that's been the big conversation in the past 2 years, I think people get so like zoned in, like tunnel vision on interest rate.
Yeah.
When there's a lot of other things that need to be in place than just the interest rate.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Our latest purchase, the interest rate was scaring us a little bit, but we knew if we could get this at a certain price that we can deal with that. And we've got the other houses that kind of carry this one a little bit until it really gets on its feet. And it's short term. So you look at it that way, it's something that you can change later. So
yeah,
yep.
I love that. So let's talk about, we've talked about your strategy for choosing markets, how you financed, how you've been smart with your money and just reinvest and reinvest. So what do you think your next move is? Are you going to continue buying in markets that you already own or find a new market, or what are you planning there?
Oh, that's such a good question. So we're the crazy people who are in 5 markets with 5 sets of teams and like 5 like competitive landscapes that we have to continue to monitor. I don't recommend that for other people. It makes a lot more sense to scale in markets that you're already in because you already have the resources there. But I think since we were looking at it as we really wanted a balance seasonally, right? In terms of financially, like we wanted strong winter markets and strong summer markets so that we kind of have like an even cash flow, even-ish cash flow throughout the year. But now I think we're at the point where we're going to start replicating what we've got in the current markets that we're already in. I think we're at the point now where we're getting a little tired of looking for, cleaning crews and handymen in brand new areas that we know, but we don't live there. So we're not like locals. So we're going to start, I think, replicating. I think, in fact, our next move, I think, is we're going to buy again, probably in Wears Valley or nearby, just because we've seen such success with this. We know that the demand here is still pretty consistent and strong, and we know it pretty well. So I think that's probably going to be our next move. But things change. I don't know. We like to say a little flexible. Like if we find a good house that isn't in Wears Valley or isn't in the Smokies and it's, in Joshua Tree, we might consider that too. So the deal is definitely a factor too. Is the house worth it,
Yeah. And I could go either way on that. So historically, up until last year, we've been like, only in the markets that we're already in. We already have the systems in place. But now, because there's so little inventory anywhere, we have had to expand. Like, okay, we will absolutely buy deals in the markets that we're already in, but maybe it makes sense to watch, instead of watching 2 or 3 markets, maybe we're watching 5 or 6 markets, which is very annoying and overwhelming, but you do have to pivot with the market. And, there's not a lot of inventory right now. Not a lot of people are selling. So because for the exact reason that we were talking about, they don't want to take a hit on their price. For people like us who want to buy a good deal because the interest rates are bad, they want to wait until interest rates go down to list. So for us, we're like, you know what, maybe we are buying. We have a goal to buy 2 more short terms this year. And we're like, it might not be in the markets that we are really used to. So you just kind of have to pivot. But it would be nice if deals would just pop up in the places we already have.
Yeah, but then everyone would be snatching them up, right? It's never like the perfect scenario. We always want to try to, we're keeping a wide net, right? We're casting a wide net because we are probably going to try to get 1 more this year too. And we're going to keep we're going to keep a little flexible in terms of which market. which of the 5 we think we might stay within. So we'll see. But again, it's like if a house pops up and it's not in the Smokies and we love it, we're going to go for it. So
yeah.
And I think that's a key factor in being successful is really staying pretty flexible too. So.
Yeah, this little setup you have is kind of making me jealous because I've got one in Wares Valley that's got a lot of flat land, but it's open, like in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then the ones that I have in the woods are on a straight up and down slope. And I'm like, man, this is a nice private wooded backyard that I love.
We've got the best of both worlds here, which that's why, honestly, why we snatched it up, because we saw all these houses on stilts and beautiful views, but you have like no yard, right? And you're like on a cliff. Whereas this we actually created this view. It was super wooded. We were able to cut down some of these trees and create the view. So we saw opportunity with this house big time. It had a garage that we actually renovated too, and we created 2 new bedrooms and a living room and kind of a pool table area. And we opened up this view. And so we can honestly say that we've got the best of both worlds here.
Yeah. And we'll see the view on the YouTube channel. But I think that that's also another really important back to basics concept for the listeners is that there are things you can do to a property to add income, not just to add equity. So when we talk about rehabbing properties, people a lot of times think, oh, I'm adding value to the property. But there are things you can do that might be, maybe they're not cheaper, but sometimes they are cheaper than adding equity by doing things to add income. So like adding a fire pit, cutting down some trees to open up this view will add income. It might not necessarily make the house worth more, but it will make it rent for more per night. So I think that it's important for listeners to hear, especially if they're new. It's okay if the house isn't perfect. There are some things you can do to improve it. Yeah. I personally like to look for houses that need improvement, or especially, I've talked about this on several podcasts, houses that have terrible MLS listings and terrible pictures. That's my favorite. I've gotten some great deals doing that.
Yep.
So I love a good crappy MLS listing.
Absolutely. And I think you have to go into it thinking this might not be the perfect place, but can I make it good, right? Like I have to say, I have to give the credit to my husband. He always has these great ideas. When we saw this place, I was like, well, there's no view and people love the view and the Smokies. And he's like, we can make the view. Like, what are you talking about? We've got it. And I'm like, you're right. Like sometimes I have to you have to think outside the box a little bit. But if you can go into it a little bit, with an open mind, you can totally find something that could become something really great. It may not be great, but it could become great. I feel like that's a good deal,
I totally agree. And now we're coming towards the end of the show. And we've got 3 questions that we ask every single guest.
Yes.
First question, what advice would you give 20-year-old Jen?
Oh my gosh, I would give everything. I have so many things I want to say to my 20-year-old self. But I think in terms of investing in yourself and even real estate investing, the first thing I would say is go read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because I feel like that's sort of a life-changing book in terms of if someone who wants to get into real estate investing or just investing in general. And then the second thing is you need to start figuring out what your plan's going to be to build wealth. And you need goals and you need action items because you're going to get started as soon as you graduate college, which is something I didn't do for years. And I'm totally kicking myself for it. I really wish I had focused more on that right outside of college to really start to jumpstart, right, my future. So
I have that same wish. Like I was making $90,000 a year bartending 3 happy hours a week in New York City.
Wow.
And just think what I could have done if I actually would have worked hard.
Right.
But I didn't. I was more concerned with being on the other side of the bar
than it's part of
working hard, but
it is just sort of the deal. But I really wish I had focused more on that and been a little bit smarter with my money right outside the gate.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Don't we all? That's great advice that I think everybody can relate to.
Yeah.
Okay. So second question, what advice would you give a new investor? We're in mid 2024 now, really weird time in real estate. What advice would you give a new investor getting started today?
Yeah. My advice would be, if you're just getting started and you're doing market research, consider investing in a market that is a drivable destination from where you live. And the reason why is because this can be really scary, investing this much money into a house, and especially something that is far away. And I feel like that can give you a bigger sense of control over the whole situation and over your investment. If you know you can just drop what you're doing and drive to your property if there's some sort of issue, or maybe you're renovating it and there's something going wrong, I feel like it will help you be less stressed about it if you know that you're not that far away from it. And you'll probably know that market pretty well if you are within driving distance of it, which I think will help too.
Sense of control and confidence. Love that. Great advice. And last question, what's your favorite book that's impacted your mindset?
So there's this book called The 5-Second Rule, and it's by Mel Robbins, and she's sort of like a self-improvement guru. And it's this notion that we get in our own way too often. And a lot of times when we have a really good idea, this hesitancy thing kind of clicks in our brain and it stops us from taking action. Whether it's bettering yourself or making a deal or, working on your marriage, like kind of anything, it applies to anything. And so she kind of explains this tool that you can use to help kind of break through that hesitancy barrier and help develop courage to take action on things and help develop confidence. It's a great book. I highly recommend it, even if you aren't going to use the tool in your life. It's just something that kind of helps you realize that you're really kind of getting in your own way a lot of times, and there's certain tools and strategies that you can use to kind of break through all of that and be your best self.
Great one. I have not read that one, and nobody's recommended that yet. So good recommendation. I definitely have that now that you say that. Like when you're going down the road, like with an idea, like kind of running with it, and then you have that little click that's like, no, I think I'm comfortable. I'm good. Like maybe I'm not going to do this.
Or maybe you're sitting in like a meeting at work and you have this great idea, but you're like too scared to say it because, people have imposter syndrome, that kind of stuff. And this kind of helps you kind of figure out where you need to find the courage to just like do it, right? And change your life. So it's been really, really impactful for me. And so I highly recommend reading it.
Great recommendation. So Jen, thank you so much for coming on. If anybody wants to follow you or your properties or anything like that, where can they do that?
Yeah. So admittedly, I probably am not as active on social media as I should be.
No, that's
I'm
a good
lurker.
thing. Social media sucks.
Thank you for saying that.
My cameraman off camera is like, "What? Why the hell did you just say that?" This is for social media. I hate social media.
I hate it too, but I know it's important to have a presence. We have a name for our business, my husband and I. We're Everest Experiences. Everest with an E at the end. And I guess the best place you can find me is probably Instagram. And the handle is Everest with an E .experiences. Oh, and we have some geese flying by.
Wonderful Smoky Mountain experience. Well, thank you, Jen, so much. And be sure to check out our YouTube after this. We are going to do a walkthrough of Jen Smoky's property.
Thank you, Avery. Thanks for having me.